Wikipedia Weekly?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, folks. Welcome to the Wikipedia Weekly Network. We'll get started soon, but just wanted to say hello, and we are getting things ready. Feel free to share this to all your networks, whether you're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We are going to be talking about Wikidata, and working with sets of content from Wikidata. So tell us where you're watching from, and we can actually bring up interesting messages on our screen, or tell us what you're working on. We'd love to say hello. Hi, Jan, who actually has his weekly Wikidata session, I think tomorrow, right, Jan? So Jan is a regular at doing this kind of thing and showing folks how to do Wikidata editing. And what we thought we'd do today is just show you one specific ask that Isaac had recently. And we went down this wormhole of looking at a bunch of different solutions. And we thought, instead of just trying to document them all for ourselves, why don't we just have a mini show and explain some of these things to folks? So that's what we're going to be doing. And we are definitely welcoming our folks from different places here. If you are coming from Facebook, what you can do is if you go to streamyard.com/Facebook, you can authenticate yourself, I believe. And that lets us see your name in the comments on the screen. So if you go to streamyard.com/Facebook as a Facebook user, you can authenticate yourself, and we'll get started very, very soon. Great. Good seeing Jan from Amsterdam. Tell us where you're watching from. Yes, and Jan's having a map theme. That's great. Map theme stuff at 1900 UTC in this channel. That's great. So tell us where you're watching from or what kind of things you're working on. We might have some time to maybe address some things that folks are working on if we have any advice. But as we walk through this example of what we're doing, we'd love to have your feedback in terms of your tools or insights into how to work better with Wikidata sets. So we'll get started in a second here. All right, and make sure to share this out to your networks. I'm going to do that right now as I go on to my networks. I haven't seen Twitter now does video natively, which is kind of cool. So you can actually go on Twitter and retweet video. It's not in their Periscope system anymore. You can actually go off and retweet the video directly. All right, Isaac, you ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, right. So let me get started in a second here.
Damn it, please stop this.
All right, so let's get started in a second here. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Wikipedia Weekly's video stream. I'm Andrew Lih, also known as user Fuzheado on the Wikimedia projects. And today we're going to be talking about working with Wikidata sets. And I know that's a very general type of goal here, but we actually have some interesting questions related to after an upload of initial Wikidata, how do you get back to that set of content? And how do you kind of put a circle around that as you start working more and more on enriching that data set on Wikidata? So I thought we would have the session where we talk about some of the things I worked on with Isaac, who's in Nigeria. So hi, Isaac.
Hi, Andrew. Good to be here this evening. My name is Isaac from Nigeria, popularly known as Uzatisa on Wikimedia projects, and I'm really very glad to be here having brainstorm with with Andrew on how to actually use various tools So we thought it's a brilliant idea to share with everyone so that we all can understand how to use some of these tools to resolve some of the issues we encounter on Wikidata and probably several other projects.
Great, thanks so much. And you're in Nigeria. You've been involved with Wiki and Daba, which is our conference for the Africa community, right?
Absolutely, yes. I happen to be one of the activator of the Wikimedia Nigeria community, one of the co-founder of the Wikimedia Nigeria community, and I served on the board of the Wikimedia Nigeria Foundation. And most recently, in 2020, I actually founded the Wikipedia Pages Warning Photos campaign that primarily focused on the the use of images collected as part of various advocacy projects on the Wikipedia articles, and that was basically we've been working on since 2020. Now I'm a little bit shifting to Wikidata to see how I can support that community, and of course improve content relating to Nigeria on that project.
That's great. Thank you so much, and it's really great to have to see so much activity around Wikidata across our different communities. It's kind of Wikidata is the ultimate collaborative project in our movement, right? It kind of transcends language and all kinds of things that are normally blockages in our community, and we get to work on the data itself in ways that work across different boundaries. So just before we get started, I want to make sure that people know that if you're coming in on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, wherever you can comment, you're welcome to say hello, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to highlight you. If you're coming from Facebook, you do have to authenticate yourself so we see your name. So if you do want to see your name associated with a comment, go to streamyard.com/Facebook. Otherwise, we are happy to see hi from random Facebook user, but it would be nice to see your name there instead if you go to the actual site, streamyard.com/Facebook, to authenticate yourself. If you're coming in on YouTube, we will see your name and we will see your comments just like this. All right. So what we wanted to do today was to walk through some of the things that Isaac first posted a question in Facebook in our Wikipedia Weekly group. And this is something I'm sure happens all the time. In fact, when I saw his question, I said, I ran into that exact issue before, which is really great to see that people are, encountering the same things. We're going to look for some common solutions. So I'm going to try to summarize it very quickly. But Isaac, I'd love to have you talk about what exactly you're working on right now. So this is what I call the user story, right? When you're talking about trying to craft the solution, we will often have a user story. And want to also welcome Richard Nipel. Ferris, are you there? I see part of your face, but anyway, we will introduce him once his face and audio get on here. So the user story here is I created a bunch of Wikidata items. It could be 10, it could be 100, but we're talking about, in this case, thousands of records, right? And then now I want to modify those new items. So I need a way to identify what they are. Like, how do I actually put them in a container or a bag? Like, how do I refer to those things I uploaded as a set? And I'd like to operate on that set in quick statements or in some way in the future. And this is a very common thing, Isaac, but it's not always obvious, right?
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about the data set that you uploaded to Wikidata.
So thank you very much, Andrew. Last week, I was looking at, I was running some queries about settlement in countries in Africa. And I stumbled on the, Ghana and realized that there are very fewer and fewer content relating to settlement in Ghana, even though they have over 10,000 settlements. So I wanted to contribute that to Wikimedia Commons. But during the creations of those items, I actually forgot to add the country of origin. I mean, the country of those settlements. So when I wanted to actually add other items, information, I realized there was no way I could, query the item. So it became a very serious issue for me. I haven't pondered on that for hours. So I had to hack in a specific, very active Wikipedia group, and I thought of Wikipedia Weekly. I said, no, there are a lot of great people here who could, respond to that. So I just punched it there, and luckily for me, Andrew responded and try to show me how I can actually resolve that. He did try to do some stuff on Excel, but that could only return 500 items. We're looking at thousands of items here, so it became a little bit very tricky. So I think he worked on he used a Python programming language to actually to actually query all the items, which was really very useful. I'm really very happy, and I want to say thank you, Andrew, because I've been able to reuse that codes to generate all the missing QID I needed to work on. So we talked about it, like, oh, it's something that people should know about because it's a common problems that happens all the time. There are a lot of issues, especially from underrepresented communities like Africa. We don't know how to solve those problems. So it gives us this idea that, oh, Wikidata is too tricky. Let me just stick to Wikipedia and all of that. So, but I can say categorically that this is something very simple if you have the basic understanding of how some of these things work. So, and that's why we're organizing this event today. These sessions to show folks how to solve some of these key problems that comes up all the time.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that background. That's really useful. And this is a common thing we're seeing. I like how you described it. Is I uploaded the basic stuff. Now I want to enhance it. Like I forgot to do this. I want to add more of this. And this is typical. And unfortunately, we don't really do a great job of describing to people how to do that initial upload and then enhance that upload later on, right? We kind of assume that you need to have all the information at the moment you create the item using quick statements or something like that. But in fact, in reality, we never have all the information we want at the time of creating those items. We want to keep working on those, right? So that's really great. That's a great thing to know. And it's great to see so many folks from Nigeria watching. Python, it is always useful. Yeah, we're going to try to show some Python, but we know that a lot of folks watching may not know Python, so we don't want to make it too scary. But as Isaac said, we gave you enough code that you can just copy and paste it, and hopefully you can make use of that Python code. So let's try to look at some of the solutions here. So one of the things that immediately we did was we went to Wikidata, right? And if I go to my user page here, first thing I know was we went to the user page for Isaac, which is T cells, right? That's your user page there. Yeah. And then we go to user contributions, right? So we go to user contributions. These are the things that you have done. But if you didn't know, you can go down here and you can say, I only want to see creations, right? If we only want to see the items you created, then you can actually tick this box here. And all this really does is this kind of just adds an extra parameter into the URL. That is the user contribution search. So let's go ahead and click on that. And I can choose whether it's in main, talk. So if I don't care about like talk pages and stuff like that, I could say main, meaning Wikidata items. That's probably a safer thing because I don't know, you might have created a talk page and we don't care about the talk pages. We care just about the Wikidata items. We can hit search. All right. So here you can see these are just the new Wikidata items that were created. Let me make this a little bit bigger for folks. And that's pretty cool. So we've actually made a filter for that. If you look up here, this line here now has the stuff that we have specified, right? We see that the target is T cells. The namespace is 0. That's the main namespace, not talk, not user, or any of that stuff. And we can see here new only equals 1, right? So you can see that I only want to see the new pages created. And that's the parameter that was put into the search request. Now you notice that here limit is 50, right? So notice it's only showing you 50 at a time, right? But you can actually show 500 at a time. Like I click on 500, right? And now you can see that it's going to take some time to come back. But it's showing me 500 at a time. Now, it doesn't tell you this, but this is a secret that most Wikipedians or Wikimedians know and they use a lot. You can request up to 5,000 things at a time. So you can actually go up here and you can't click it. But if you go up here and you put in here, you can say 5,000. And you're going to have to wait a little bit, but it will return 5,000 rows here, which is kind of nice to see, right? So that's a little trick. That's kind of secret trick number 1 is you can request 5,000 rows, right? So I'm going to say here, 5,000 entries back for new creations. This is the Etherpad I'm that we're kind of jotting some notes down here. So you can actually click on that and get 5,000. And of course, if you are interested in your own username, you can replace T cells with your own username there. So that's nice. Now, the problem that we had is that look at all the stuff you get, right? And Isaac, you were interested in just getting a list of the Q numbers, right?
The Q numbers.
Yeah.
And possibly if we can add the labels in English, that would be very useful as well.
Right. So, this is human friendly, it's nice to look at, but if you're actually, wow, server timed out. Ooh, that could be really big, right? So if we ran it for too long, it might give us that little error there. So anyway, let's try it again. 5,000. It worked the other day, but you never know. If you're asking for too much and the servers are busy, it might not come back. So that's one method, but it's not guaranteed to work, right? So that's why it says 500 is default. You don't want to have your requests time out all the time, right? So that's coming back here. So if you do get all the stuff back here, you probably would have to run some kind of cleaner or something just to scrape what you want out of here, right? Because you couldn't just copy and paste this entire thing there, right? So we can show you some examples of that. So that's example one, is let's do that. Now, what you may not know, or but you may never used, is there's actually what we call an API for Wikidata and all these sites, right? The API gets you a much cleaner and precise set of results, but it's not really human friendly, right? So that's one of the problems with an API. So if you just want to see what the API does, the URL for that is you actually go to like wikidata.org/w/api.php. So if you go there, this actually gives you the interface for the API. The API stands for Application Programming Interface, right? So this is basically a way to ask Wikidata or Wikipedia or Commons or any of the sites that we have for like machine readable results, right? Rather than having, this did time out. So we're more busy now than we had the other night, Isaac, when we tried this out. But instead of having a human friendly list here like this, you're going to get something much more like a database dump, right? So, for example, if we come down here, you can see all the different things we can do with an API. This can be dizzying. Don't worry. I'm not going to expect you to understand all that stuff. But the nice thing about this is you can always go down to the bottom, actually have some examples, which is kind of nice, right? So, for example, if you want to come up here and you want to say, let's take a look at the query. If I click on query, you can actually query a bunch of information about here. But the nice thing is you can go down the bottom here and there's some examples, right? So you can actually go in here and you can say, look at the site info and revisions for main page. If I click on this, you will see what kind of stuff comes back, all right? So look at this is what comes back from an API call. And you can see that this is not necessarily very human friendly, but it is something we can use for other tools, right? So I just want to let you know that there is this whole world of an API back here that you can play with if you're so inclined, right? But if you're not inclined to work with all that junk there, we actually have some scripts that are ready for you to work with, right? So one cool thing about this is if you're not interested in actually going in and mucking around with the basics here, you can actually use a tool like Google Spreadsheets to do this, right, Isaac? It's what we did first. So what we can do is you can actually go into Google Spreadsheets, and we actually had a call here. So we can actually say, let's say you have your username, and we can use our count, like say 500 here. And we can actually load 500 Q numbers from the API using Google Sheets, which is kind of cool. So actually, I think we can share this sheet with folks. We can put that right into the that here, say Google Sheets, right? So the cool thing about Google Sheets is that it can actually access the API of the wiki and then bring back stuff. So let's take a look here and see what we did here. So notice here, I can actually there's a formula here called import XML, right? And XML is just a generic way of like hitting anything with HTML, XML, anything that you want. So what we're doing here is we're actually taking this API call here, which normally would bring back very scary stuff looking like this, But Google Spreadsheets can actually digest that for us and give us just what we want, which is kind of cool, right? So what we can see here is that instead of coming back with all the stuff here that's unreadable, you can actually just extract a certain portion of that. Okay, so what we can do is let's go ahead and show you what that command looks like. So we're going to show you this command right there. Okay, so we're going to come out here and paste that. So let's get rid of this for a second. Yeah. Okay, so this is basically the API call that we have here, right? API equals action equals query. And then we want the format to be XML, right? Because our function in Google Sheets processes XML. We want to list the user contributions, right? So this is where it says list equals user contributions. We want to limit to 500. Now, this is a limitation that just the API has. You can only grab 500 at a time for that exact reason we saw before. We don't want to time out. And then we want to specify the user, right? So here's the user, UC user equals T cells. And then namespace here, which is 0, right? That's the main namespace. And then properties is we want the titles. And then we only want to show the new ones. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? So it's a long thing and you could never construct it on your own, but don't worry, we have that that sample there. So if we have that, look what happens. If I click on that, this is what comes back when we hit the server. So notice it says, here's the user ID for T cells. Here is the title, right? So these are all the Wikidata items that Isaac has created. But it's giving us this gigantic list. And would we want to find out a way to cut and paste and get rid of all the stuff? Well, we don't have to, because what happens is Google Sheets gives us a way to do that. We can actually use what they call XPath. And again, we don't expect you to master all these things, but for anyone who's kind of interested, you can look into these things and find out on your own. There is a second argument it takes. So notice it here. It says, give me the URL, but then you can also specify an XPath, which basically says, what fields do you want from that XML output? So here you can say, I want to look at the item and I want the title. Does everyone see that? So it says item and title. And if you go back here, you will see that, in fact, it will look in the item right here, and it'll extract the title. That's it. That's simple, right? So basically what this XPath with one line of code, this is the only code that you do here, is you say, look, for each item, extract the title. And that's it. And that's what you get over here, which is pretty cool. So that is a really elegant way, just in Google Sheets, to hit the API, which some of you might have known, but you're like, oh, I don't know how to program. The cool thing is you don't have to know. You can actually use Google Sheets. The only downside is you can only grab 500 entries at a time. If you want more than that, you need to actually kind of go back out to the API and get another 500, right? So that is the only downside of this, and you'd have to write extra code to do that. So for up to 500 items, this is a really nice way to go with getting the user data, the Wikidata creations like that. Okay. Does that make sense, Isaac? We went through that real quick.
Sure, it does. It really makes a lot of sense. So.
Yeah. So I think for small batches, this will work for anyone, right? So if anyone is interested, you can actually go down here and say copy and make a copy of the spreadsheet, and you get an example. And the cool thing is this is not just useful for this particular query, but you can customize this API to say, I want to look at all page revisions. I want to look at other things. But the key here is XPath. This is something that if you didn't see an example, it's kind of hard to figure out from Google Sheets saying, oh, yeah, just give it a URL and an XPath. And you're like, I have no idea what an XPath is. An XPath is basically just a way to specify which field you're interested in the API output. Okay, so there's an example there of the spreadsheet. And I think, do we have a copy? Yes, we put it in here. So you can actually go ahead and look at that spreadsheet. All right, so another example of how you could do this is instead of using the API here, Google Sheets, we can actually use the PAWS system. So Isaac, tell us what the PAWS system is in our Wiki community.
So thank you very much. PAWS is a cloud that hosts various tools that you can actually work on. It has OpenRefine or Python's SPARQL, text file, photo, and the like. So it depends on what you want to work on and the tool, specific tool you would like to use. For example, if you're interested in working on OpenRefine, you just go to hub.pause.wikimediacloud.org. It opens the home page. Then you can log in if you're not already logged in. If when after you logged in, then you can decide on what you want to do. If, for example, you want to play around the OpenRefine tool, maybe if you have some raw data that you want to work on, uh, you have those data, but you're not sure if some of them already have existing item on Wikidata, but you love to create them. So you can, just OpenRefine, for example, to reconcile this data to identify those ones that are already been created, so that you don't, end up creating duplicates. So once you get there, you can select OpenRefine, which is the tool you will want to use for that. The descriptions I just made. So once it loads, of course, you must have either create you must either save your tools on your data on Excel sheet, or you download them from whatever source you want to download them from. Then you keep them on your on whatever page, whether you want to open the file, just have them on your computer. So in that case, so once you open the OpenRefine, after you must have logged in, then you have an option to either take your data from your device, which is this computer, or through a web address or a database you already have. But in my own case, let's say I want to upload them from a file I already stored on my laptop. So all I need to do is to choose the file.
Right. That's a great point. And this is, the PAWS system is great because it's what we, in general, if you've ever heard of cloud computing, it's basically the Wikimedia servers giving you all these computing resources instead of you having to run things on your laptop. And am I using the right software? And oh no, I'm using a work laptop, so they won't allow me to install Java or any software or download stuff onto it. It's locked down. You don't have to worry about that because PAWS is a cloud computing environment that is very, I don't want to say very, but it's as user-friendly as you can make it while giving you the power of a developer. And as you said, Isaac, it has gotten a number of things added to it. The basic part of it is what we call Jupyter Notebook. It's very popular in the developing and coding community for doing Python, the R language, doing all. You can even do SPARQL. Like you can have a whole notebook of SPARQL stuff. So it's basically what we call a notebook environment where you don't have to write a big program. You can actually write little snippets of code and test things out one by one. And as Isaac said, one of the things they've also installed in there is OpenRefine, which we'll show you later on, which is really nice. It's a way to run a job against Wikidata to see, whether things match in your database versus what is in Wikidata. But let me answer a few questions that came up, which is very good to remind folks here. How do we get access to that Google Sheets link? And Jan put a link to our Etherpad that we have here. If you go to w.wiki/4 capital NOS in lowercase, you'll get to our Etherpad, which we are putting in the links and notes there. So Jan has also done a good job of pointing out that you could go back to your quick statements batch, right? So I think, Isaac, this is your batch that you uploaded in quick statements. So you actually do have information here about all the stuff that you uploaded, which is great, right? So you could go back here and find out information about your batch upload there. But then, you'd require extra cleanup and scraping of this. But it's a good reminder that you can always go back to your quick statements batch job and find out what was uploaded there. Yeah. Okay. So
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Yeah, that's I didn't think about that. That's great. Yep. So you can go to your quick statements batch there. So let me show you why we like PAWS. So PAWS is a system that any of you who have a MediaWiki login can log into PAWS. I know there's some weird cases of people saying they need to apply for access. That was weird because every account I've ever created, it just gets access to PAWS automatically. But if you have any problems, let me know and we can figure out why that's the case. So, all right. So the basic environment of PAWS looks something like this. You get kind of plopped into what looks like a file browser. It's almost like Google Docs or Google Drive, right? And what you can do is you can make any number of things. You can make a new Python 3 program. You can make a new R, which is very popular with like data science folks. You can make a new SPARQL notebook, which is just putting a bunch of SPARQL requests in there, which is kind of cool. But in general, it's just an environment for editing stuff and creating programs. So if you go into Python 3, for example, you can actually have an interactive programming environment. So you can actually go in here and say print hello world, and they'll print hello world. So you can just kind of interactively program stuff, right? So that's just the basics of how PAWS works. Now, where it gets interesting is that built into this, it already has our main Python libraries for working with Mediawiki sites built in, which is great. Well, I should say it's downloaded and installed in the environment. So here's an example of one script that I created that will just do some very basic stuff, which is basically going in and hitting the API, right? So these are just two ways of importing the tools that we need here. And then this is the API query string that might look familiar to you folks, right? This is what we had before. Actually, let's go with T cells just to make sure we're using the same example, right? So this is the same API call that we had before. This is just one line of code that goes into the site and gets a HTML request. And then we use something called JSONPath, which actually just goes in and grabs the title out of there. So let's take a look and see what happens here. So I'm running that code there. Let's say, I hope that works. Do we get a list? Yes, we have 500 things. And there's our items right there. Okay, so let me show you exactly what happened here. Each gray box is executed independently, right? So if I go in here and if I hit, I think it's shift return, you'll notice that turns to a little asterisk very quickly. That means it actually went out to Wikidata, grabbed the content and brought it back. And now it's waiting for the next operation. I'm like, oh, okay, I got the stuff back. So let's go ahead and look at the content that's there. And what I'm doing is I'm actually matching against the stuff I'm looking for, which is the title, right? And then I'm actually going to see how many titles came back, and 500 came back. And I'm actually going in here and printing out all those titles there, right? So this is one other way of doing it, which is just going into Python, if you know it. And there's many of these scripts that are online on our site that do this, right? On the Wikitech site that do this stuff. This is not too hard, but you are still limited to 500. So if you find that there's more than 500, you need to kind of go back out and get another 500 and so on and so on. Now, how many came back, Isaac? I think it was 4,000 or so for your query. Yeah, so I think if you go out there, you'll get 4,000. Right? Let me just show folks what this looks like. If we go in here. So if we go out to the API and say, give me 500 things, you will see here are all the pages or the Wikidata items that were created for Isaac. This is the key here. If it says, oops, you need to keep going to get everything. See this? So it basically says, I'm giving you 500 things, but if you want to get more, you've got to continue by asking for more stuff, right? So that's where you need to write some more code to do all this stuff. Now, I didn't want to do all that, so I did another technique. So the other technique I had, which was, let's just go ahead and call the same thing that we did before, which is we go out here and we look at 5,000 things coming back, right? So instead of asking for 500 things, I could call for 5,000 things. And that's basically what I did here, is I basically used that same request. And look at what I asked for here. I asked for actually 4,200 here for you, right? So I knew that there were 4,000 some, right, Isaac, for you. So then what happened was I said, I want the username T cells. I want 4,200 items. I could go up to 5,000. I could actually ask for more if I want to. And then I did the same thing. I said, there's the query string. I go out there, and then I'm using a different library here, which basically allow me to scrape the output of your thing, right? So if you look here into the code, and I say view source of this code, ooh, it's a long page, so it's going to take a second here. Okay, so I go in here, you look at all the stuff that's coming back here. Look at all this stuff, right? That's a lot of stuff. But the cool thing is I can actually just extract it with one line of code here. And I basically just say, find all the titles of that type, right? And then what happens is it actually comes back and I can get all 4,000 things here. So you notice that the technique I'm using here is slightly different. The technique I'm using here is I'm actually using the normal tool that you find on Wikidata here, getting all the results, and then I'm scraping out just this part of the return value, right? So it's slightly different. It's a little bit, I would say, less efficient. I'm returning a lot of stuff I'm not actually using in the end, but it works in one shot. Versus if I had to come back here, I need to go back and grab 500, 500, 500 at a time, right? So that's kind of what happened here is I can actually grab all 4,000 some things and I scrape out the Wikidata items. And then Isaac, I think this is where you copied this whole list and you were able to do interesting things with that, right?
Absolutely.
Now, after you get this list, let's go in here, right? And the cool thing is I can publish this. So notice that after I've done this, I can hit public link. And this code is public. Like right now, I don't necessarily want anyone to look at this code. This is private to me. I might have passwords, I might have sensitive stuff. But if I'm sure that it's publishable, I can hit public link. And now I've published to the world, and I can actually go into the Etherpad and tell you folks about it, right? So I can say, pause code for scraping the new pages by contributor page. Then now you folks can click on that and see what that code does. And then I can show you this one as well. I can hit public link here, and I can actually publish the PAWS code here that says less useful PAWS code that can grab 500 at a time, but still useful. And you can look at that PAWS code as well. So I just want to give you both versions there. So you can take a look at those. So this is the one that got us 4,000 some rows back, right? So what we can do is actually take this entire list here, right? And we can actually go into Google Sheets and do something interesting with that. So tell us what you did with that list of 4,200 afterwards.
So basically, I wanted to add the countries of those items. I mean, they are settlements from Ghana, so I needed to add a country. So I copied it basically on the Excel sheet, then prepared it for quick statement. So then added all the other items in a way that quick statement can recognize. So then run it with quick statement. So I used quick statement to add all the important items that were originally missing from those items. So that was exactly what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So for example, there's several ways you can do the quick statements, but something very simple. Obviously, these QIDs are not humans, so this is wrong. But if you wanted to add P31Q5, you could just basically do that. Oops, that you don't want to do that. Copy. It tries to be too smart. It tries to go Q5, Q6, Q7. I don't want that. But anyway, you can see what you can do here is just paste that into a spreadsheet, and then you can actually copy and paste this directly into quick statements, and you're off to the races, right? You can actually do your addition of more Wikidata triples there, right? So that's just a very simple way of taking the output here, bringing it into a spreadsheet, and then generating quick statements right away for what you might want to do. So let's very quickly show folks how you worked with OpenRefine. So why don't you get your OpenRefine ready there, Isaac, to show us what you've done while I show folks how it started up. So
okay.
Here is, go ahead, just get it ready there, and I'll just show folks how it starts, and then I'll hand it over to you. So for folks who don't know, OpenRefine, this is relatively new, as of 6 months ago, maybe. You can actually run OpenRefine inside PAWS. So instead of having to download it and run it on your own computer, you can click on OpenRefine, and it is basically like a big Ooh, when you run the first time, you might have to wait. It's spinning up a whole virtual system here. So let me wait 5
We can just
seconds.
refresh.
And
You
yeah,
can
refresh.
refresh.
All right, there we go. It's really confusing, isn't it, Isaac? If you think you did something wrong, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just it takes a little time for the machine to spin up on the back end there. All right, so here we go. Now we do have to remind folks who are maintaining it to upgrade OpenRefine. It's actually not the latest version at this point, but this is what it looks like. So let me hand it over to Isaac, and he's going to show you kind of what to do with OpenRefine. Yeah, you have it there.
Okay, so just like I said earlier, sometimes you have a whole lot of data that you want to create an item for on Wikidata, but you're not sure if they are already existing on Wikidata. So one of the things that OpenRefine does is that it helps you to identify those data that already have item on Wikidata. So I'm just going to show you how to reconcile that. Then Andrew will just take over from me from there. So once you have your data saved on your computer, it could be in a web. You can also use a web address, maybe that a website where you already have those data. So you could just use the URL or simply your computer if you have them downloaded on your computer. So this way, you choose your file. It could be saved in your document or other folder, so you pick them up. So in this case, I want to work on some Nigerian hills, but I have them raw. I don't know which of them already exist on Wikidata, so I want to be able to identify them so that I won't create duplicate for them. So this way I can pick my file from my computer. So I'm going to pick it's raw, which means raw data. So next, you clicked on the next button. So a single click will take you to the next page. So it's loading now. So you have something that looks like a snippet. So now you may want to create a project, which means you want to start to work on this data. So let me rename this to show the difference between this and the ones I have on my computer. So let's say this is the name of my file. You can name it anything that can make you easily identify your files. So here I want to create a project. So you click on the create link. So it takes you to a page where you will be able to do anything with your data. You can transform your data. You can delete items. You can add more. You can delete data. You can add additional thing. You can rename anything with a single click. So here I want to see if some of these data already existed on the Wikidata. You have Selitva hits, Zora, Berry hits. So I don't know which ones already exist. So let's see. Let's try to reconcile them. So this way, you clicked on here. You have different tabs. You have a facet text filter. In case you are interested in the particular thing, you can use the text filter. But in this case, I want to reconcile. So I just go straight to reconcile. So you can start your reconciliation. Start, you click, single click. So here it gives you an opportunity to interact with Wikidata. You can have this in your language, but here we have English, so let's work with the default language. Maybe Andrew can show you how to add your language later. So when you click on that, it gives you the interface for you to select the entity that you want to work on. So in this case, I have EOS. I'm working on EOS, so I can go ahead with EOS. You can also, if you have property that are read that is relevant to what you're working on, you can just click here. But in this case, I'm only interested in the EOS, so I want to click on
Right.
that.
So it's going to match the names against hills,
Yes.
instance of hills in Wikidata, right?
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. So you start your reconciliation. Usually, this can take some time, depending on your data. If you have a very huge data, it takes a lot of time for it to load. But here we have 268 rows. So we can decide to look at the first 50. Maybe we just want to see more data. So we can click on this. So you can also edit individual column. For example, if I want to change the name of this, you can click on the edit button. So that way you can, edit it and change it. Then you may also want to transform your data in a way. For example, if I want to replace anything here, I can, come to editing cell and transform my data. But while that is loading, there's something very important that you need to know. Some of these commands has to do with basic computer language. For example, you have the GREL, which has been designed specifically for OpenRefine. So you can, just if you understand how to use that language, but it has a whole lot of documentation which you can, go through and have the basic knowledge of how to, use that. Then again, you can decide to use Python. If you understand Python language, you can click here and, switch to Python as the case may be. But I'm actually not interested in, transforming this data. Basically, I want to try to reconcile it with existing Wikipedia item and create items for those that does not already exist, using quick statement. But there are two ways to do this. You can transfer to quick statement directly, or you export to Excel, and from there you can format it and maybe move to Notepad and prepare it for quick statement. I use the CSV versions of it. So once that is ready, then you can copy and paste it on quick statement and run it. So that way you can get those data created. So let's wait a few more minutes for this to load. It's almost completed, so that we can see how you can match your data with wiki data items. So it's a very powerful tool, which means you can do anything with it, just like the way you work on Excel. For example, if I'm interested in deleting this, this particular column, I can do that. Just to select and go to edit column, you can delete here. You can also rename. You can do anything with your data. So that's one thing about OpenRefine. Very easy, in terms of the interface. You can easily communicate with it. Okay, it's loading now. Sorry, Andrew, you wanted to say something earlier before I interrupted you.
No. It's perfectly fine, and it looks like it finished.
Okay, very quickly, you can see that from your left-hand side, you can see that we have 227, items about hills that are already existing on Wikidata. Nigerian hills. Then here you see none. It means that this ones really does not have an item yet. But again, we might need to try to see if there are items that we need to match with this, so we can look at this in some ways. For example, you can see create new item. It means that this does not exist on Wikidata already. So, but for this, you have a warrior hills. So let's see if it's from Nigeria. Yes, it's a hills from Nigeria. So you can match.
How about the other one? If you mouse over the other one, what does it say?
The other one is it's just hills, so we don't know where that is from.
Yeah. So it's possible it's a duplicate, but it's possible it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I think it's better to just match with this that describe it as a hills in Nigeria. So let's match with this.
Whoop. I think you might have matched the wrong one. That's right.
So the other one might just be a duplicate, Andrew. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit on something. A lot of the times when you're doing the matching, you might have to, go off and investigate both things and see if they're the same or different. It's a lot of moving back and forth. Yeah.
So, and that sometimes it could be time consuming depending on the volume of your data. So for this, you have it in Nigeria. This one is in United States. So certainly not this. So let's check this. United States, certainly not this. Not this. So we can match
the hovering over it is so nice, right? You can expect a lot of things very quickly. Yeah, it's nice.
So we can basically match with this. Just to save time, it involves going through each of these to check the ones you can match. But once you finish matching and you're satisfied with what you have, then you can click on the. Now you have 41 that is matching. Then you can export to directly to what do you call it, a quick statement, or you export to Excel. So I want to export to Excel because I'm really very comfortable with using Excel. So I can just export like this.
Oh, but those are unmatched. Those are the unmatched ones.
Just those unmatched. So those are the ones I want to create a new item for. So that way you have them on Excel, so you can open your Excel files to see them. So your data still remain the way they are, but you're just sure that this particular items, data's does not already exist. So you can copy them and
Did you
maybe
see what
just go
Jan
to.
said? It's very. Thank you, Jan, for finding that out. Which is sadly not uncommon to see that in the Cebuano load of data, it might have created a duplicate. Yeah.
So I think basically that's what you need to do. Then you
Yeah.
can just filter your data. You can create a separate sheet for it and move forward from there. Editing mode. Sorry.
Great. Thanks. You share. That's great demo of the power of OpenRefine and being just a general data cleaning tool. Like the data you came in with are pretty nice in that they've been cleaned, but sometimes you come with very dirty data, right? And OpenRefine has a nice reputation for helping you figure out, especially if you like thousands of rows, and if you have like Mary Smith all caps and Mary Smith lowercase, Mary Smith, are they the same? And they can help you figure those things out as well. Yeah. So that's great to see. We encourage you to play with PAWS. PAWS is such a powerful but not very well known resource in our community, and you don't have to be a programmer or a coder or developer. It really is something you can start playing with, and you don't have to worry about destroying too much. I mean, it's powerful, but you can start off small with some tutorials on how to use that. So I encourage folks to try that out. Just go to pause.wmcloud.org, and you actually might want to play with the SPARQL one first, because SPARQL, you definitely cannot do any damage. You're just querying stuff. Python, once you start doing tutorials, you can do a lot of editing very fast on Python. So that's something you have to be concerned about. But OpenRefine as well, you really can't do much damage unless you start getting into some of the writing functions of it. And as Isaac said, you can either export the stuff that you have reconciled and then export to quick statements, or you can actually execute it within OpenRefine. So actually, there is now an active team of Wikimedians working with the OpenRefine folks on upgrading OpenRefine to even be able to upload files to Commons and add structured data statements there, which is great to see, which is really cool. Okay, cool. Oh, look, we got great feedback, Isaac. The one you matched is the correct one, which is great. But they have different coordinates. So there's two hills that seem the same, but they maybe have different coordinates. So that's sometimes really hard.
It's actually very make a lot of sense to actually verify, in case it might be a duplicate. So, but then again, Andrew, I wanted to ask you. I did it a few weeks ago. I don't know if that's the right thing to do. I just want to confirm now. There are some items that I would describe them as orphan. I mean, no description, no labels, nothing. Is it the right things to do to assign them to a particular item? They're just there. They are an ID, but no, it's just like an orphan. Nothing is just describing nothing. So does it make sense to edit it and assign it to a particular object or persons or anything?
Are you talking about an item with no statements at all?
At all, no descriptions, nothing.
Yeah, it's sometimes there's no general rule. Sometimes you run across an item with no statements, and you're suddenly like, should this stay or should it go? Is it being used anyway? Is it being referenced by anything? Is it attached to an article? If it's an item with absolutely no linkages, then oftentimes you'll see it just nominated for deletion because it does nothing to describe why it's important. But usually, if it is linked in, like something's pointing to it or it's being referenced somehow, you'll try to see if you can add at least a P31 or P279 statement, right? At least you want to be instance of or subclass of something. If you can't put either of those two, then it probably should be deleted is the general rule, I think.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Nope. I think the other thing that we wanted to go into very quickly is the question we had is once you have identified a set of items that you're interested in working with, now how do you keep working with it, right? So here's an example. Like we came up with your, let me delete this column for a second here. So we can see that here are 4,000 some rows here, right? These are the items that we came up with that you want to work with. And then suddenly we're like, well, how do we work with that? Because there's several options here. One, we could use a tool called Pagepile. So if anyone's ever seen that before, it's kind of neat. It's kind of like a way to refer to a bunch of items in one with one identifier. So for example, let's go here and go to pagepile.toolforge.org. And you actually say, let's create a new pile. And we can say manual list. So let's go in here and copy your 4,200. Let's say, whoops. And here's a list of them. Copy that. We'll go to our Pagepile, and you can say, let's create a list of here's. These should be Wikidata, right? These are Wikidata items. I don't think you care about that. So we can actually come down here and say, let's do it. Okay, so now we can refer to all those items as Pagepile 39417, which is kind of cool. So there are a bunch of tools that work with Pagepile IDs. So you can actually go to things like Petscan, right? That's a famous tool. So you go to Petscan, you can actually go in here and use a Pagepile ID for a lot of these functions here, right? So you can say, here's them. Oops, not that one. I can go back here and use 39417 right there and come back in here. And then now suddenly this one number refers to all 4,200 things, which is kind of cool. So that is, one tool that supports Pagepile. So you'll see a lot of them. Another cool tool called Tabernacle also has that. So if you go to Tabernacle, you can actually go in there and say, here's my Pagepile ID right there and say run. And then you can go ahead and look at all the labels and descriptions of those things. It's pretty cool, right? So that's one way you can do it is go to Pagepile and make a new Pagepile ID. If you want to, you can actually look at the results and, oh, how come that's not working? Ooh, that's not good. Huh, okay. Might be a weird bug there. But you can see here's a bunch of other tools that you can use Pagepile IDs. So that's one. The problem is Pagepile IDs you cannot use in a SPARQL query. So what if you want to use it in a SPARQL query? Then we have some other options. So let me go ahead and put Pagepile into this list here. So tools to work with bunches of Wikidata items. And we'll put it in Pagepile. The other thing we can do is actually add a statement to every single one of these Wikidata items that says it's part of a project. Right, so there is a property called P5008, and this is called on focus list of Wikimedia projects. I believe it's Wikimedia project. So let's go and take a look at this. My favorite tool for looking at properties is a tool called Prop Browse by Hay. So if I go in here and say P5008, you will see P5008 on focus list of Wikimedia project. This is kind of a cool thing you can use to use as almost like a housekeeping item inside Wikidata. So look at this. This is P5008, and you can actually come down here and see how it's being used. Okay, so if you look here, you'll see there's a bunch of different examples. Like you can say, oh, here's someone's biography, or so is a Wikidata item about a person, and this project called Black Lunch Table is tracking it as part of their project. Pretty cool, right? Wiki Project Provenance is tracking this person. Wiki Project, this is a project by librarians called PCC, Program for Collaborative Cataloging. And they actually have this Wiki project, and they are labeling that. So it's pretty cool. So if you go here to the item, let's say, you'll notice that if you go down here to this statement right here, you'll see that it here says on focus list of Wikimedia project. So you can actually create, Isaac, if it makes sense, you can create a new item in Wikidata that is just a wiki project and then assign 5008 to point to that. So that's one example. So what you would do, I'm not saying this is the one you should use, but let's say that this is the queue number for this. You could go into your quick statements and say, by the way, oops, V, no, copy that. So you could actually go in quick statements and add, P5008 and point to a wiki project. And then now you can return all 4,200 items by just saying, give me any Wikidata item where P5008 is set to that in your set. So for example, let's try that out with this one. So let's go to query.wikidata.org and I can say, show me anything with P5008, and then the queue number that is set is the one what we just saw, which is this queue number, right? I don't know how many are going to come back here. So again, this is look for every Wikidata item that's part of program for Collaborative University of Washington. So you can see all these things came back. In fact, what's funny is it's 4,300 some results, almost similar to what you're coming back with for your other one. So this is very useful because now with one line of SPARQL code, you can refer to all of the items that you're interested in. Okay, so I don't know if there are lots of guidelines around this. The creation of P5008 was a little bit controversial because people are like, should we really be mucking around with Wikidata items to label them as part of a wiki project? But I think it's been very useful for a lot of folks. So, yeah, so that's kind of interesting that we have this way to do it. So Jan is asking, what did you write to shortcut to that query? I don't know. Which query is that? Let me know which query you're talking about. I'm not sure which one you're. Oh, you mean, okay. I think I know what you're meaning. Like I have a shortcut on my Mac that does that. So it just fills in a generic query, which is super useful. Yeah. So that's actually not a browser thing. It's my Mac thing. I just type in query, boom, and I get a generic query there. So I'm sorry that's not terribly useful for other people, but I use a shortcut manager on my Mac called Text Expander that does that. So if you have that equivalent on your Windows, Linux, or whatever machine, that might be useful to have as a quick thing because I use it all the time. Yep. Aha, yes. Yeah, I got lost there for a second, but I think that's what you're talking about is getting an instant query there. So Isaac, does that make sense? Like you could make a wiki project item kind of like that, if it makes sense. On the other hand, if you're just using it, if you're doing
that's
it like,
way I can track all contributions made as part of that project.
Yeah.
For example, exactly. If we want to create some items as part of a project run by the Wikimedia Nigeria Foundation in here. So in other words, to track those content, I can actually use that very important property to track all contributions made as part of that project, provided the items are added to. I mean, it's added to the new items created, right? I mean, the property is added to those.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, so if we had those, if we had that property, because we need to create that item for that project, so we need to add that item to all the new items. So I get.
Yeah. I think as long as you make whatever new item you make it an instance of wiki project, and I think you're good to go. Yes. It'll be fine. You can see, there's a lot of projects that are instance of wiki project like that that are being used in that way. Yeah, I think it's a nice way of tracking. A lot of GLAM projects use this to track articles long term. Yeah. Cool. So that's one way of doing it, is using the P5008 property, right? Like that. What are some other things that people can suggest here for doing that? Okay, here's an interesting comment. As I understand, the presence of 5008 is not a longer term ground for notability. That is correct, right? I would say even stronger. Like P5008 has almost no bearing on notability. It's basically just saying, here's a little internal tracking thing we use in Wikidata, but it shouldn't be used as any kind of indicator of notability. Yeah. And that's a great point, Mahir. Yes. If you stick a 5008 on an item, forget to improve it, then deleting it remains a possibility. I think that's absolutely correct. It is not a stamp of approval that something is notable. In fact, it's completely detached from notability in that sense. Yeah. Yeah, I think I get what you're saying, but you're absolutely right. If anyone's interested in the historical reason for this 5008 property, the reason why is because some projects are using very prominent properties like collection or what was the other if some people remember, there's other properties people were using as kind of internal housekeeping to like editathons and GLAM institutions. I think catalog numbers and things like that. And then people are like, no, the catalog and collection are used for formal things that a GLAM institution has put out, or a publisher has put out, or that a auction house has put out in a catalog. It's not for Wikimedians doing their own private catalogs, right? So we were encouraging people, don't use catalog, don't use collection for internal housekeeping. But there's a big debate about that. So that's why P5008 was created as our own kind of housekeeping. And I think it's been a good development in that we don't have to worry about P5008 being compatible with external data sets. It's just our own little tool that we use. I'm not sure that history is written down anywhere, but if you look at the property proposal for P5008, you probably will pick up on some of that there. Another thing I thought I might just want to point out is there is a service that I, unfortunately, am not that good at, but I thought I should point it out. And it's very confusing because it's called Quarry. So Quarry is a really nice tool that we have. Whoops. It's hard to find. Quarry. wmcloud.org. Quarry is a way to actually share queries against traditional SQL databases that we have in the Wikimedia movement. So the cool thing about this is it's not just you running it on your own like SPARQL. You can actually share and look at other people's queries. So you can see here, people can actually try things out. And then if they think it's a good query that people might want to run again, you can actually publish that query and go on here. And you can see some very well-formed queries here. As you can see, this is not just for Wikidata, but for any wiki project here. So you can see some things here. Users by number of created articles on SKWiki, right? So you can actually click on that and you can see the code that someone actually came up with to do that. And what's nice about that is it actually stores the results here, so you don't have to rerun it, right? So the results are stored here in Quarry. And you can actually say, oh, that's cool. They did a query for Slovak. I guess that's SK, the Slovak. I can change this to Vietnamese or change it to Yoruba and do the same query. Kind of cool, right? You can reuse people's queries if you want. So that's the nice thing about it. The downside of Quarry, it's not a downside, it's tough. You kind of have to understand the organization of database tables in the back end, which is not always the easiest thing. So if you do want to learn more about it, you can go in here and say, oh, let me look at the Mediawiki databases. And I'll warn you, very powerful, but darn, that's a lot of stuff to remember. That's a lot of stuff to understand. And I will admit, being a coder and being a database guy, I still don't understand all the stuff that's going on here. Like normally what will happen is you're really interested in building a tool around, let's say, statistics, or you're interested in building a tool around page views or something, and you might really understand one database. But to understand how all these databases work across each other takes a lot of work. But the cool thing is you have that power if you're willing to invest the time into it. But I think it's pretty tough to grasp all these things. But that's why Quarry is cool, because you can actually see what other people have figured out and build on that. So I believe there is a way, Isaac, to actually get the answer of this column with a Quarry query. I just don't know how to do it. So it's like, if you can say, show me all new pages created on Wikidata by Isaac that are only in this namespace, and give me all of them without having to do it in 500 item chunks. I believe Quarry can do that. I'm just not smart enough to know how to do that at this point, because you have to understand a lot of how this is all organized. And I guess the big lesson from this session is you have the power and the capability to query Wikidata, Wikipedia, any of our projects down to this level of detail, which is awesome. Or you also have the option of bringing up the results in Wikipedia, I'm sorry, not Wikipedia, on a page like this, and then scraping it, which is not the most efficient thing in the world, but it's actually better understood than trying to figure out a bunch of database tables, right? So this is another option, and a lot of options in between. So that's kind of the point of this session is we have a lot of cool tools, a lot to understand, but the nice thing is it's not locked behind a wall. It's not like Facebook where it's like you could never figure this stuff out, right? You have all the stuff available. You just have to kind of figure out the different tools that get you there. Yeah. So that is the kind of the 10,000 foot view of all the different things that we have here. In addition to other tools we may not know about, like I'm sure there are other techniques that power users know of, but these are just some of them. You can use the normal query page. You can use the API. You can use a spreadsheet. You can use maybe Petscan. I'm not aware of a way to use Petscan to get to both the Wikidata content and the user creation content on the databases. So yeah, it's a little bit weird. Like Petscan is really cool, like all the stuff you can do with it, but I could not figure out a way to combine the power of the query on a SPARQL query with all the information on the user database, right? On the page revisions, let's put it that way, right? SPARQL and Wikidata gives you what is there now. If you want to look back into revisions and who did what, it doesn't give you much, right? But you should know there is a way to call the Mediawiki API from SPARQL. So I at least want to let you know about this because I don't have deep experience in this. I've done some queries in this area, which is really cool, but I thought I'd show you this at least. This is a nice page that shows you how you can actually, in a SPARQL query, let me show you an example here. Okay, so this might look like a SPARQL query you're used to seeing like this, but this is kind of cool that you can actually say, hey, you know what? While we're looking at the Wikidata items, let's call the Mediawiki API and actually do some really neat things. Okay, so this is another one where you can say, you can work with categories and stuff like that by calling the Mediawiki API. You can go in here and say, find out how often these images are being used by using the image usage API, which is kind of neat. You can't do this with SPARQL, but you can actually call those things there. So I'll show you an example in a second, but let me show you some things that folks have commented on. So Mahir says, to find items created by user query is definitely possible, also with label. Yep. Oh, interesting. Also is not possible with Quarry. Oh, cool. Good to know. So yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do most of this with Quarry, but I just don't know all the connections across the tables to get us there. But I'm pretty sure I could do it if you gave me a few hours. But it was not obvious when I first looked into it. Now, Mahir says, doesn't Petscan have a page? Yes, it does have a field for Pagepile. So if you do know the Pagepile ID and you create it already, then you can do all kinds of cool things with Petscan. It said, I don't know if Petscan can generate that list of 4,000 things in the first place to say, show me all new items created by T cells, and then put it, like, return that to me. I don't know of a way to do that. But the cool thing is, if people don't know, you can actually do some neat things here. So if you go in here and say Pagepile there and have it come back, which I don't know whether you need to set the wiki. Oh, there we go. Look, isn't that cool? So here you are, Isaac. Here are your 4,200 results, right? And then these are all the things that extracted. If you didn't know, you can actually kick off a gigantic statements right here. So for example, Isaac, if you want to add that P5008 to all your things, you could actually go in here, and I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't do this. It's not the right queue number. I'm just showing you what example is. So if you want to add P5008 Q 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to obviously, you can say start QS. It's not starting it. Don't worry. but it's going to load it, I think. Did I use the wrong syntax? I think I might have used the wrong syntax. Let's go back. Yes, I need to. Oh, I hate this. You need to. Hold on, like that. Okay, hit start QS. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Ooh. So what happens is by just putting in the Pagepile, load it up, and then I put in this thing. I say, apply this quick statement to all 4,000 some things. It's like, okay, here's the quick statement. So you're ready to go? Hit run, and you're ready to go. Okay, but this is the wrong thing. So don't run this query. But I don't have a dummy thing to add there. But this is what's so cool is like once you get the Pagepile, you can do all kinds of cool things with it, which is nice. And then the last thing I'll show you is a really cool query that I made that bridges Wikidata world and Wikipedia world. So this is kind of nuts, but this is a query. Running it? Oh no, it's running it. Okay, well, that's fine. It's going to take 30 seconds to come back, but I'll show you the code. This is a query that runs both Wikidata, but then checks against, I think it's Wikimedia Commons. Yeah. So this query is one where I said, show me all English Wikipedia articles where these images of paintings from the Metropolitan Museum of Art are used. And you're like, what crazy query is that? So let's take a look at the image grid. So these are the images from Impressionist painters from the Met Museum, which I do a lot of glam work for. And it shows you which articles they're in, which is kind of cool. So let's go back to the table and show you what happens. So this is the English language article in Wikipedia that is using an image of a Metropolitan Museum of Art painting who's an Impressionist. Like, wow, that's a pretty complex query. But it's kind of neat because if I go in here and say edit SPARQL, this is what that query looks like. And it's basically saying this query gets me the Impressionists from the Met. This gets me the artworks from the Met. And then it's actually calling the API of Mediawiki to actually get the image usage information as well. Wow, that's a lot of stuff.
It's a very huge, query, and very complex. I mean, not for beginners like myself.
No, it's not. It's not even for like intermediate. This is pretty geeky. So I'm gonna put the link down here if anyone wants to play with it. I thought it was pretty neat. I finally got to work. It took like 15, 20 minutes for it to work eventually, but I stole some code from other queries and finally got to work. So this is show all English Wikipedia articles where Met paintings by Impressionists are used. Yikes. But the cool thing is, once this query is done, you can actually customize it for all kinds of other things, right? You can say, what if it's not Metropolitan Museum of Art? What's not Impressionists? What if it's statues from the Rijksmuseum, right? That's pretty cool. You could even make a front-end like interface for this, which is kind of neat as well. So anyway, the point here is that we're starting to see these connections across like Wikidata, Wikipedia, all these tools. Try them, keep playing with them, and we can do more episodes in the future walking through some more specific examples. But I'm glad we got your problem solved, Isaac, and we have some techniques to work with.
And I'm really glad to learn new stuffs I could play around with in the next few weeks. So this is more like training the trainer. So I can go out there and train folks here in Nigeria and probably organize a much bigger training for African Wikimedians. So it's something that I would really be very interested to do. I want to, say a very big thanks to you, Andrew, for taking the time to, compile all of this, because I know it's something very huge. It requires a lot of time to prepare and all of that. So thank you so much for the knowledge and thanks for, your work. You continue to inspire me with your work. I recently got to know you, and I've learned so much since I got to know you, and I want to say we're blessed to have you around as one of the fantastic Wikimedians, we have in that movement. And we'll continue to reach out to you once we are stuck or we did, want to enrich our knowledge of how things was generally in the Wiki world, so we can always reach out.
Great, thanks so much. It was my pleasure, and I love. It's bi-directional. Like when you come up with a question, it makes me have to think about solutions, and it got me to discover things I never knew about in the first place. So I love that it's not a one-way street; it's a two-way street. And there's a famous either a quote or a principle by Richard Feynman, a very famous physicist. Right? He basically said, the way to understand things is to try to explain it to others. Right? That's kind of his basic tenet. Is explaining things simply is the key to understanding something deeper and discovery, which is great. And that's exactly what we do all the time with these kind of shows that we have on the Wikipedia Weekly video stream here, including the one that Jan will be doing tomorrow, which I think is map related, if I remember his comments there. So if you're interested in maps and things like that, please do come and watch his, which is a map theme. And him and Albin Larson have been doing this every week, and there's such great nuggets of information and wisdom in the Wikidata item they're doing on a weekly basis. So we should definitely pay attention to more stuff that they're doing there. So thanks again, and we will maybe come back another time to show you, more things based on the next steps that you have out there for the work that you're doing. Maybe a big thing on OpenRefine where you talk to the developers and what new things that they're doing. It might be cool to see us in dialogue with them. So thanks again for prodding us to do this.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
All right. Take care, folks. We'll see you next time.